Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I never thought I would find myself entangled in a battle against my own homeowners association. The neighborhood was known for its strict rules and the homeowner association's intimidating tactics to enforce them. It felt like they were the playground bullies, and we were the helpless victims, forced to comply or face the consequences. People were afraid to speak up, fearing the loss of their homes. I was one of them until a fateful incident changed everything. Last year, during Halloween, the homeowner association enforced regulations on decorations, forbidding anything they deemed satanic. It was just one example of their excessive control. But my story with the homeowner association began when my son had an accident, leaving me burdened with medical bills. Faced with the choice between paying the homeowner association fees on time or covering my son's medical expenses, the decision was clear. Family always comes first. I reached out to the homeowner association, explaining my situation, hoping they would understand the slight delay in payment. Instead, their response was cold and unsympathetic. They not only piled on daily late fees, but also criticized my financial choices. I reluctantly paid the exorbitant fees, costing me over $1,000 for a $250 payment. I wanted to move on and avoid any further trouble, but they weren't done with me yet. A month later, I received another bill demanding an additional payment, even though I had already settled my debt. They threatened to foreclose on my house if I failed to comply. The amount they demanded, $5,000, was astronomical, and I didn't have that kind of money. The fear of losing my home gripped me, despite having paid them what I owed. It was during this desperate time that a compassionate coworker noticed my distress and recommended a lawyer who offered a free consultation. I shared my situation, and the lawyer assured me that the homeowner association was violating the law and that I could sue them. Suddenly, my timid self disappeared, replaced by a newfound determination. With legal support, I felt empowered to confront the homeowner association. My lawyer explained the legalities involved, how the homeowner association's own bylaws allowed a 1-month grace period for residents with a consistent payment history. They had no right to impose the initial late fees. Furthermore, their debt collection practices were unlawful, amounting to harassment. So, armed with a countersuit, we went to court, ready to face the homeowner association's smug board members. The homeowner association thought they had the upper hand, believing they could foreclose on my house and profit from it. They presented their case to the judge, citing their bylaws and even insinuating that my actions would cause problems in the neighborhood. But then, my lawyer presented our countersuit and provided evidence of my payment history. The judge had questions for me, seeking the truth amidst the conflicting claims. Judge, did you make a payment on first date to the homeowner association? Me, no, Your Honor. Judge, why did you miss your payment? Me, my son's medical emergency required that money for his treatment. Judge, did you pay the homeowner association on second date? Me, yes, Your Honor. I have the check record as proof. My well-documented payment record caught the homeowner association off guard, shattering their deceitful facade. The dominoes began to fall, one by one, exposing their inappropriate debt collection practices and harassment. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring the homeowner association guilty. Not only did I get back the money I had already paid, but I also received a significant cash settlement from the homeowner association. The victory was bittersweet, as it meant putting this ordeal behind me and securing a brighter future for my son's college fund. The impact of this case extended beyond my personal gain. The neighborhood witnessed the fallibility of the once untouchable homeowner association. People realized that standing up against injustice was possible, and that the homeowner association's power had limits. Faced with the potential for massive settlements, the homeowner association started to back off, realizing the consequences of their actions. While I firmly believe in fulfilling financial obligations, I also advocate for empathy and understanding. This entire situation could have been avoided if the homeowner association had simply considered the temporary delay in payment or listened to my explanation. Instead, they pushed me to the edge, forcing me to fight back, and ultimately, their own greed destroyed them. To all those who read my story, remember that even the smallest individual can triumph over the biggest bully. They may try to intimidate you, but your determination can overcome their power. Stand up, fight back, and reclaim your rights. Victory is possible for those who refuse to be silenced. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This story is about my grandfather and how he outsmarted his brother after his brother exploited their mother. About 40 years ago, my great-grandparents were dying. Great-grandfather was gone, and great-grandmother was on her way out, abusing morphine to lessen the pain. She was writing a will when she was sober, but she was rarely sober. Her estate was essentially what would be a multi-millionaire's estate adjusted for inflation. Her estate was in Ireland, while my grandfather and his brother were in England. My grandfather went to his local pub to see his brother. He did this every Saturday night to keep in touch with him. This time, something was different. His brother was not there. Instead, his brother spontaneously moved to Ireland and spent time with their mother, who was heavily on morphine. The morphine was clouding her judgment, and bear in mind she was writing a will. My grandfather's brother, we'll call him Lee from now on, went to Ireland to cozy up to their mother in hopes of getting her whole estate. My grandfather didn't know Lee was doing this and didn't think much of it. Fast forward about a year, and great-grandmother passes away. Funeral day arrives, and everything goes fine until they get to the will. Great-grandmother was high on morphine when she made the will, and everything she had in the will went to Lee. Nobody else got anything in the will. Putting two and two together, everyone was pissed off at Lee, but the will couldn't be contested because there were people who signed as witnesses, including her attorney. Lee becomes an outcast, but everyone gives up on trying to save their mother's things except for my granddad. Lee inherited a large plot of land in rural Ireland. Nothing special, except that it couldn't support a septic tank and was worth a fortune. The house on this plot was right on the edge of the land, but the septic tank was on the neighbor's land. Lee didn't know this, so he didn't buy the land next to the house. This doesn't meet building code requirements, so the house can't be sold until the septic tank is on his land. My grandfather knew this and bought the land surrounding the house. Lee fixed up the house and got a building inspector to check if it met the building code so he could sell it. The inspector noticed the septic tank and informed Lee that he couldn't sell the house unless the tank was on his land. Lee went to the neighbors to buy the small plot of land with the septic tank, only to find out they sold it to my grandfather, who was unwilling to sell it to Lee. Lee had invested easily over £300,000 before Ireland switched to the euro in the house, so the house was in great shape and was supposed to be resold. However, Lee couldn't sell the house for a profit because my grandfather owned the land with the septic tank. On the other hand, Lee couldn't put a septic tank on his land because it couldn't support one. My grandfather had put Lee in checkmate, where Lee had to sell the land and everything on it to my granddad. My grandfather wasn't going to buy the land for anything more than £5,000, and to this day, Lee still won't sell it to my grandfather. My grandfather didn't want the land, he just wanted to return the favor to Lee. Now Lee is just scraping by on his plot of land because of his stubbornness, and he still, to this day, won't accept defeat. The next one is a petty revenge story. So I have lived in a townhouse for the last 3 years. I live with my husband and two 60-pound dogs. For a bit of background, I got attacked by a dog just before my neighbors moved in 2.5 years ago, which left me with a fear of strange animals. However, recently I was able to work through my trauma with my therapist. My neighbors have 4 loud and reactive dogs, 3 Chihuahuas and 1 Australian Shepherd. They charge the fence whenever they see someone on the other side and bark constantly. This has prevented me from using my backyard for the last 2 summers. Now that I have worked past the panic attacks and fear, I spend a majority of weekends in my yard and let my dogs go back and forth freely. My dogs have been well socialized and don't have any interest in the fence when the other dogs are reacting. Up until yesterday when the neighbors' dogs came out, I would bring my dogs inside, but it would still take a minute or so for their dogs to calm down. I would let my dogs back outside to play when the neighbors went back in. This was no big deal to me. Now, cue Sunday. The neighbors let their dogs out, they react, I bring my dogs in, same old routine. Except my neighbor curses me under her breath, saying, "Keep your ducking door shut." This is not the first time they have been rude either. This gets under my skin considering her dog's reactivity is the reason I did not feel comfortable in my own backyard, and it is not my dogs who are reactive. Plus, I have always been the one to bring my dogs in, not the neighbor. so I've started to be a bit petty. Now, when the neighbor lets their dogs out, I stay out and play fetch with my dogs while her animals are going apeshit, instead of bringing my dogs inside as I have always done. My dogs love it because they are getting more exercise than before. It's only been 3 days, and my neighbor is exasperated and has to chase her dogs around the garden. Side note, they have another dog on the opposite side of them, which they are equally reactive to as well. I have patio furniture being delivered tomorrow, and I fully expect to enjoy my yard to the fullest this summer. After a week or two, I'll probably put up a visual blockade so her dogs can't see mine to be nice. But I'm not going to restrict my well-trained animals for her untrained ones any longer. If she doesn't appreciate my courtesy, I won't give it. Update. The neighbors decided to cuss me out and tell me to go inside last night. I said no, but put the dogs inside because the neighbors were being aggressive. They said our dogs should be able to be outside too, so I should go inside. I replied that their dogs' reactivity is not my problem, and they are more than welcome to use their yard. The fact that they can't stop charging the fence long enough to piss is their issue, and I stood in the middle of my yard. They shouted at me to get the duck inside. I told them make me, a bit childish, I know. One told me to meet them out front, and I said no, if you want something from me, climb over this fence yourself. They yelled a bit more, but I didn't respond, and they went inside after a minute. I think the neighbors have finally cracked a bit, and it's only week 1. I'm not proud and honestly don't want to deal with this nonsense, but I'm not going to bend to a bully. The next one is an entitled people story. This is such a mess. Many people here commented about what my cousin would probably do in retaliation, and I was naive about it because they were exactly right. I last posted on Reddit about my cousin who gave me a junk beach cruiser bike out of his parents' backyard when my mountain bike got stolen. I cleaned up and fixed up the beach cruiser, and then suddenly my cousin wanted me to either pay him $60 for it or give it back because he wanted to sell it after I made it pretty. But the rest of the family, including his parents, basically told him to grow up when he tried to get them involved. Then he found out about my AIDA post. One of his friends apparently saw it and told him, either here or on a podcast or something, I don't know. But word spread around. The whole family found out because my cousin ranted to them, but none of them are angry with me. They actually sympathized with me for even feeling like I had to make the AIDA post to begin with when my cousin was so clearly in the wrong. My cousin ended up freaking out over it and confronting me on my way home from work. This time he demanded even more money for the bike. He said that since I love Reddit so much, he was taking an a-hole tax for humiliating him, and the cost of the bike was now $80. He ranted about how paying him $80 for the bike was the least I could do after I humiliated him. I refused and said that he was acting like a grifter, and the bike was hardly worth anything. I put in effort to make it rideable, while he let it rot in his parents' backyard for years. It was junk when I started, and I made it work. Then I listed all the things I did to fix it and how much it would have cost the bike shop to fix it instead. He somehow still didn't see my point and still stated he wanted the money now, or he'd be taking the bike back whether I liked it or not. I told him I was done with this and tried to ride off, but he grabbed me and pulled both me and the bike over before I could ride away. I said, "What the hell, man?" while I was getting up, and then he actually slugged me in the face. It didn't break my nose, but really freaking hurt, and it made me bleed. Then he took my bike and rode off with it. I'm older than my cousin by 2 years, and taller too, but he's built way sturdier than me since his father is a bit of a husky and strong guy, and he inherited that body type, so he had no problem knocking me down and robbing me. Someone came over to help me up, and then I called the cops. Family or no family, I wasn't about to just let him get away with doing that to me. And the altercation happened right in front of a shop with CCTV, which the cops later got video from. I got taken to the hospital to have my face checked, and my cousin was arrested by police at his apartment. He had the bike there too, and had even already listed it for sale online, but took it down later. Thanks to something someone commented on my last post, I documented the serial numbers of the bike by photographing them and writing them down at home. So I got my bike back from the police without much issue. My cousin tried to tell the police the bike was still his, but I had texts on my phone from back when he said I could have it, and lots of other text evidence of the harassment that followed. Plus, his parents were there when he gave the bike to me, and the whole family knew he'd tried to grift me. So he surrendered it, and the bike was returned to me at the station. My boss gave me a couple of days off work to recover. The injury to my nose was thankfully minor, so I'm doing fine. My cousin didn't get off easy, though. After he was arrested, he was found to have been drinking. So now he's been charged with theft, assault, and underage drinking since he's not 21 yet. He called his parents to come bail him out, but they refused after finding out what he did to me. They came to see me after a couple of days and were extremely apologetic. They said they had no idea he'd do such a jerk move to me. They also said he'd been asking for money a lot lately, and likely was spending that all on his habits. None of us have any idea where he got the alcohol or what kind of long-term punishment he's in for, but I doubt he's going to get off very lightly from this when he goes to court. I did get questioned about whether or not I can press charges, but the police already have the video of the assault and theft, and my cousin is still getting charged for underage drinking, so no one is really asking me to try and speak on his behalf. I don't really want to either. And since I waited a few days longer to post this, my cousin is now out of jail, and his parents have learned from him that he was also behind on rent, and is now facing eviction since his lease was month to month. He was also fired from his job for being a no-show since he was stuck in jail for a few days. One of my friends works in that same place too, and my cousin had already been on thin ice for bad behavior, a lot of tardiness, and repeatedly not showing up for work. So getting arrested was the last straw for his boss, and he was fired. So now he's looking at misdemeanor charges, has no job, and is getting evicted. All because he had to be a jerk and a grifter. From what my parents and his parents tell me, he acted like everything was all my fault, but his parents have shut that down and chewed him out over the fact that he beat me up and stole from me, and this is karma for that. Then they made him promise to leave me alone from here on out. I've heard his parents aren't going to be letting him move back into his old room either. Instead, they plan on putting him up in the loft above their garage, which isn't exactly roomy, has plywood walls, and there's no AC up there for the summer heat. I went back to my routine of riding the bike to and from work, and I haven't been bothered about it anymore by any of my cousin's jerk friends. In fact, they seem to have completely distanced themselves from me and anyone else I know, so none of them made any attempt to apologize, but I don't care since I don't really know them. It's just insane that all this was over a used beach cruiser. It's not even an expensive one. I'd like to ask my cousin one day if it was worth it. But I don't want to see his face again anytime soon. The next one is an entitled parents story. Years ago, my cousin Lucy and I had a strained relationship because she let her son Damien do anything he wanted, never punished him, and brushed away anything he ever did as boys will be boys, or he's just a kid, etc. It came to a breaking point between us when Lucy and Damien were visiting years ago. Damien was 12 at the time, and my daughter Maggie was 9. Maggie was happily sitting and playing her Xbox in her bedroom upstairs. While Lucy and I were talking, Damien got bored and wandered off. A few minutes later, I heard screaming and crying. I rushed up to Maggie's room to find her on the floor, blood all over her face, while Damien was casually playing the Xbox. It turned out he came up and demanded a turn on the Xbox. Maggie said, "Sure, just let me finish the level." So he snatched the controller from her hand, smashed her around the face with it, and then shoved her out of the way. I rushed her to the hospital. Luckily, it looked worse than it was, and there was no lasting damage, and I live in the UK, so no medical bills. But I was furious. I told Lucy what Damien did, and she shrugged and said, "You know how boys are with their video games? She should have just let him play." I told her in no uncertain terms that she and her son were not allowed anywhere near me or my family. We got into a huge fight over this, where she, of course, tried to absolve her little angel of anything. So I lost it and told her if she didn't discipline him and teach him boundaries, she would end up raising a monster who would grow up to be a thug or worse, which infuriated her. This caused fallout with the family for years, largely because Lucy lied and told everyone her son and Maggie had just been play fighting, and that's how she got hurt. It was just an accident, and I was overreacting. After a few years, everyone forgot. I still forbade Lucy or her hellspawn from coming anywhere near me. Several other family members did the same. I can't imagine why. Fast forward to a little before the pandemic. Damien was 19. Just like I predicted, he soon learned that thanks to his mother, he was bulletproof, as she would never believe he did anything wrong. So his behavior got worse and worse, to the point where he was kicked out of every school in the area and had to go to a special school. I got a call from Frank, Lucy's brother, telling me Lucy had been rushed to the hospital, that he knows we don't talk, but Lucy was seriously hurt and he wanted to let me know. Despite our history, I went to visit Lucy, accompanied by Frank and his wife. Before this, we had been really close, and I was upset to hear she was hurt. When I got there, I was shocked by what I saw. She was really banged up, her face swollen, bruises all over her arms. It turned out Damien had done this. She was really struggling for money and he refused to get a job, so she finally tried to lay down the law and tell him to get a job or she was throwing him out, so he attacked her. He almost dislocated her jaw. It was horrific. Now we had a history, but at this point none of that mattered. I was worried and sad for her. I immediately asked her if she needed help with anything. She seemed surprised, but we ended up all having a really heartwarming chat, with her saying how much it meant to her that I came to see her. I thought maybe we were turning a corner and could repair our relationship. We had been really close as kids. Oh, how wrong I was. A few weeks later, I started getting blasted on social media and receiving nasty messages and texts telling me what an awful person I was, and how could I do what I did to Lucy. I was confused. I hadn't done anything. I called Frank. He had no idea either, but said he would look into it. Turns out Lucy had told everyone I had come to the hospital and mocked her, gloating, "I told you so," while she bawled her eyes out. I confronted Lucy about it, asking her how she could lie like that. She hit back that this was all my fault. It's what I deserved. If I knew this was going to happen, why didn't I do more to help her? She then demanded I pay her at least £10,000 for damages I caused, like WTF. She lied to everyone because she couldn't stand that I had been right and decided to punish me for it. For months I endured hateful messages from family members who believed her lies. Not all my family believed her, of course, and Frank and his wife cleared things up about what really happened. He managed to record Lucy admitting that she lied, which got most off my back, but there were still a few relatives who had it in their heads that there's no smoke without fire, and I must have done something to make her say what she did. But they're all distant relatives on her side, so who cares? Then the pandemic rolled around. Everyone forgot the petty squabbles Lucy and her lies caused. But last month we held a family gathering at my parents', the first in years due to the pandemic. Lucy showed up. Thankfully, Damien was absent on account of serving a prison sentence for aggravated assault and battery, unrelated to what he did to his mother. I went to ask Lucy how she was doing. The first words out of her mouth were, "You need to pay me what you owe me. If you don't, I'm taking you to court. I need that money. It's the least you can do for ruining my life." She followed me around the party, demanding I pay her, telling everyone who would listen that I had ruined her life. My, what a happy family reunion. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.